a man who goes by T.J. Hoover. It seems like at the time he was in the hospital, he was mistakenly declared brain dead. And all this happened from an overdose. But even though he was thrashing around crying, the organization allegedly tried to pressure the medical staff to go ahead and proceed with the procedure to take his organs.
We've got a really shocking story that involves organ donation. The government is moving to shut down a nonprofit after allegations arose that some organs were taken from patients who were still alive. Meg Oliver has that story.
When an organization entrusted with the gift of life repeatedly puts patients at risk, the federal government has the duty to act.
HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on Wednesday announced his department was decertifying an organ procurement organization, or OPO, called Network for Hope, citing a federal review of 351 cases where organ donations were authorized but not completed. Nearly a third showed cause for concern. The review found with at least 28 cases where the patients may not have been deceased at the time organ procurement was initiated. That includes T.J. Hoover, a would-be donor who was hospitalized in October 2021 following a cardiac arrest.
He was thrashing, crying, and grabbing the doctor's hands to stop him. Even after those signs, the organ procurement process continued.
Hoover's sister, Donna Rohrer, alleges their family had initially agreed to withdraw life support after they were told he was brain dead. But the federal review of Hoover's case suggests the next day hospital and organ procurement staff documented improving neurologic function. One day after that, records show Hoover became conscious during a donor-related heart evaluation and had to be sedated and paralyzed so the procedure could continue. That evening, the review says doctors were preparing to remove his breathing tube when Hoover became agitated and they stopped the process. Hoover ultimately survived, and in congressional testimony last year, a whistleblower said the OPO had violated its standards.
I am so confused. So are you telling me they were doing the testing to make sure the organs are good, so yes, they can go through and take them when he actually dies? So, but he wakes up, and then they put him back to sleep with sedation just to continue with the testing of his organs to see if they can be taken. This is the craziest thing I've heard. This is the craziest thing I heard, y'all.
The case should have been halted immediately once neurological function improved.
At the time, the OPO said its staff was following approved protocols. And on Wednesday, Network for Hope CEO said his organization would appeal the decertification. For CBS Mornings, I'm Meg Oliver.
CBS News medical correspondent Dr. Celine Gounder has reported on this system for over the past year. She's also editor-at-large for public health at KFF Health News and joins us now. So, Celine, how is brain death supposed to be determined, and what appears to have gone wrong, specifically in T.J. Hoover's case?
So brain death is actually a series of tests. So a clinician examines the patient. If they're on a ventilator, you take them off the ventilator to see if they can spontaneously breathe, so without the assistance of the ventilator. And then a second physician confirms it. But in the case of T.J. Hoover, none of that happened. And he was on a different organ donation track, something newer called donation after circulatory death. In other words, after your heart stops. He woke up the morning. His organs were scheduled to be harvested. And the organization's own protocol said to stop everything. People did not.
Wow. So Congress.
So that's where they was like, okay, let's put him back to sleep. They stabbed that in his neck. But I don't know if they really stabbed in his neck, but they put him back to sleep and they said, yeah, let's keep going and continue with see if his organs are good to be taken. They smiling about it. Let's keep going.
Has been investigating a wider net of organ procurement organizations. What have they found?
Yeah, and I've been looking into this for over the past year. It's not just Kentucky. This is something I've seen across the organ procurement organizations across the country. In New Jersey, for example, Congress says that organ procurement organizations across the country. In New Jersey, for example, Congress says that a patient came back to life. Leadership told staff to keep going. These nonprofit nonprofit organ procurement organizations are reimbursed for what they spend, for what they do. And in 2023, HHS Inspector General said that system actually invites abuse, the way in which they charge. And look, this is not a small business. Some of these CEOs of these organizations are making tens of millions of dollars.
So then I think the question is, should we be afraid now to register to be an organ donor? And what should viewers take away from all of this now when they're thinking about it?
Look, I worry that this kind of reporting will discourage people from being organ donors. Donations fell last year for the first time in over a decade. Now, some of that is you have fewer opioid overdoses. That leads to people being donors, right? But in Kentucky, more than 2,100 people came off the rolls perhaps as a result of the TJ Hoover case, just in a period of 4 months. The answer is a system that earns back the trust. You have to behave in a trustworthy way. And so CMS can write better rules. That's Medicare, Medicaid. They can enforce the rules better. Congress can change how these organizations are paid and immunity. House Ways and Means Chairman Jason Smith says they won't stop investigating until every bad actor is held accountable, because families deserve a system they can trust.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's a crazy situation, y'all. Crazy situation. But does this make you worry about being an organ donor in the first place? Let's get over into the AI breakdown, y'all, and see what else we can learn. So, as we know, the U.S. Department of Health has officially begun the process of decertifying the Network for Hope, a Kentucky-based organ procurement organization, following the federal investigation into the allegations that the group pressured hospital staff to harvest organs from patients who showed active signs of life. So they are reviewing that 351 cases from 2021 to 2024 where organ donation authorized but ultimately canceled. Uncovered more than 100 cases with concerning features. And this includes 73 patients showed unexpected neurologic functions or signs of consciousness that should have immediately halted the organ procurement process. It seems like they don't care that you show any brain function at all, and they're still going to go forward with it. So the investigators noted that instances where the employees failed to recognize that hospital sedatives or drugs were masking the patient's true neurological state. In a 2022 case, an overdose victim began moving and looking around less than an hour after being removed from life support. Yet the retrieval attempt was not immediately stopped. Former employees and federal documents revealed that OPO supervisor repeatedly yelled at coordinators and pressured hospital staff to find a different doctor if the attending physician refused to clear a patient for organ harvesting. That's so crazy to me. They have to get paid on the back end if they're acting like that. The federal crackdown was heavily prompted by a 2021 incident of the Thomas Hoover case. And as we know, on the operating table, he began thrashing and crying despite his active signs of awareness. The OPO supervisors allegedly tried to pressure them again to perform the surgery, but it was ultimately blocked by the doctor. That's a good doctor. And then, as we know, that the Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced that he is decertifying, describing the Network for Hope as a bad apple that demonstrates a clear negligence and compromises patient safety. This is only the second time the federal government has moved to shut down an OPO, following a similar decertification of a Miami-based group, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, which will eventually transfer Network for Hope responsibilities across Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, and West Virginia to a different nonprofit organization. The network leadership, of course, have strongly rejected the allegations and announced its plans to appeal the federal decisions. But just off that little TJ Hoover thing, I think you don't deserve to be an organization in general. This is a crazy situation, y'all, but it does make you question being an organ donor in the first place. Like they said, organ donation is a good thing and people need them. But if the people who are organ donors don't feel that the system is safe or it cares about them in general, why would you be one in the first place? Let me know your thoughts, y'all. Let me know if you disagree with anything I said. It's a crazy case and it's a crazy situation, but these are the type of stuff we have to look at and review.